Hello and welcome to the Spittin' the Truth podcast. I'm the Sports Guru 716, also known as Andy, and I hope you enjoy our first episode. I'm here with Dylan and Keith. Can you guys introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Dylan. You may remember me from previous podcasts I've done with Andy, and we've had a lot of fun with them, so I was excited to be invited back, and I look forward to being a part of this today. Hopefully entertain you guys. That's it.
Hi, I'm Keith. I'm just here to ask the questions. I've never done any of this before, so I guess we'll see how it goes.
So, just to give you guys a little bit of an understanding here, we're trying to work out some audio and video, so if you guys are not thrilled about that, that is what it is. Comment below with any suggestions on how to maybe fix it, because it's an enigma, so that's that. Dylan's cam may go in and out. Keith's microphone may fluctuate, and honestly, my voice is always pretty bad, so we're just going to go with it how it sounds. So, we're going to kind of cover in this podcast not what I necessarily covered, unless there was a difference of opinions, which there was, and we may cover some other things. So, first, we're going to talk about Jonathan Drouin. So, yeah, that's a thing.
That Drouin guy.
Yeah, so to give a little background for Keith and everybody else, Drouin's like a 20-year-old hockey player, third overall pick for the Tampa Bay Lightning. He feels he's not getting enough.
Hold on. Third overall pick. What does that mean? Is that good or is that bad? Explain that to me.
That means he is the third best player the year that he was drafted.
Thank you.
So he's highly skilled. However, he feels he's not getting enough playing time with the big, good players on Tampa Bay. So he demanded a trade. Now, I think that's wrong. I think he didn't really earn it. He had 6 goals in 89 games. I feel like that's not enough. So, Dylan, why do you think that's enough?
It's like the way the situation has been handled, it's hard to justify, like, oh, he's just a kid. What right does he have to decide how his career should be going right now if he hasn't proven that he's earned the chance at this career since being drafted? But at the same time, he was very highly touted for his offensive talent going into the draft. Many thought he was going number 2, and he ended up going 3. He, in his career, he has, in his NHL career, I should specify, 40 points in 89 games. So he's just below half a point per game throughout his career. And I mean, we've seen instances in the past with, I know I very briefly spoke to Andy about the Eric Lindros trade. He refused prior to the actual draft itself to play for the Quebec Nordiques. And then they still drafted him number 1 overall, and he continued to hold out. We've seen it in football. Eli Manning wouldn't play for the Chargers. And I mean, I know those instances are different, but we don't look at those players in the same light that Drouin's being held. Like, oh, this young kid is being arrogant or spoiled brat, as Andy has called him. But they've done similar things without even, like, giving the team that drafted them a chance. Drouin gave the team a chance, and he's not happy with the situation. So I think it's understandable of him to want to leave.
But why isn't he happy with how the team has performed? Is it just because they're not doing as well? They're not winning as many games?
They are very good. They are the second. If you base it off last season, they lost in the finals. So they were the second best team in the league last year.
So then why does he want to leave if they're such a good team?
See, that's where I also have a problem. But, Dylan?
this is hard to justify him being in the right, but saying this, but I think it could come down to partially his role with the team. As a third overall pick coming into Tampa, he was probably really excited. I'm going to get to play with Stamkos and Victor Hedman. This team's got young talent. We're going to be good for a long time. But he's come in, and they've sort of, I don't want to say held him back, but they haven't given him the 20 minutes a night superstar role yet because they're developing him. And he might feel as though he's ready to take on a larger role, and they're not going to give it to him there. So, I mean, that's the part where it's hard to defend him, like, not being spoiled. He just wants to get more ice time and whatnot. But they're in a position to where they don't need him to produce immediately because they're already good. So they want to develop his game as a whole for when they do need him to be that go-to guy.
So then you could say that he's being impatient.
I suppose.
So then he'd be in the wrong. He'd be in the wrong in that case. Andy?
I look at it like this. I brought this up last night, and I think it needs to be mentioned. It makes me think that playing time is more important to him than a Stanley Cup at 20 years old. And I understand you're in the beginning of your career, and you're like, well, I'd rather be getting all the goals and being on ESPN and doing this and doing that, you know? But at the same time, you got to think to yourself, hey, man, there are players in this league that have played 20 years and never even got a chance to get to the Stanley Cup. There are some players that go 15 years without even making the playoffs to even have a chance to go to the finals. And this kid is on a team that is good enough to make the cup. Now, that I have a problem with too. I think that's a situation where you should be more appreciative of how good your team is. Like, it's not like he's sitting behind bad players. He's sitting behind good players. So, I don't know. Like, I think that at that point, he's kind of just, he should want a championship.
So here's a question. Is the team good enough to survive without him?
Yes.
Yeah, so then why don't they trade him? Why don't they just say, fine, get out, bye?
Because where they drafted him, because now around the league they see that he wants out. And I'm pretty sure it's like, I remember looking on Twitter, it's like a 50-50 split between players and analysts and things that were in support or against what he was doing. And I feel like the NHL teams are going to be like that too. Only like half the teams probably think that this is a good idea, where the other half are probably like, "Yo, man, you're being a brat. You haven't earned it, you know." So only a couple teams want him now. The red flag is up, and now, he was the third best player, right? So you want compensation for the third best player. And
Right.
and those teams
But
know.
now aren't there other teams out there who are saying, sweet, let's grab this guy? Are there any teams that are really saying that?
Well, yes, there are. There are quite a few. But I don't think they were offering third overall pick return in compensation because of how he's acting. They're probably like, well, Tampa's going to try and dump him. Let's try and lowball them. And I don't know. Dylan, I don't know if you watched Yzerman's press conference. I know I didn't, but I also read a lot of transcripts from it. But he made it sound like this has been going on for like a year, where he wanted to kind of hinted towards maybe wanting a trade. But how much do you think it hurt him when he made it public? Because if it's been around for like a year, how do you think making it public was a terrible idea?
Do I think it was a terrible idea by Drouin?
Drouin and
or
his
by...
agent.
Yes and no. No, because it's gotten to the public and it's given Drouin this reputation that he may or may not have, like, that may or may not be true of him. We don't actually know, but we're getting this perceived notion that he's just gonna be a crybaby or whatever until he gets his way, gets to a different team where he can be the go-to guy or whatever. But yes, in that if it remained quiet for all this time and Tampa wasn't doing anything about it, stepping up and saying, like, hey, I would appreciate a trade from this organization. I don't think I'm being properly utilized, etc. It seems more imminent at this point in time that Drouin will be traded at some point than it did a year ago when nobody was even mentioning his name as a possibility.
Then I don't know, I think when it got made public is when the team wanted to send him down. Do you think that sending him down to the minors was not a good move? Do you think that sending him down to the minors was not really actually for his development?
It's a tough call. I think I don't want to disagree with the move to send him to the minors because he has, like, struggled a bit. And, like, I say a lot with young players, like, you send them down to the minors, they're at a lower level of play, but they get those top minutes. He'll be one of the best players. Well, he should be one of the best players in the AHL. So you give him 20 or so minutes a night, let him work on his game, different aspects, different situations, have him produce, maybe boost his confidence a bit, and then you maybe at some point later in the season you bring him back up and he's ready to go with.
I feel like his confidence isn't part of the issue, but I'm pretty sure it pissed him off to be sent down into the minors.
Go, Dylan. You're good.
And I mean, I see how it could, because when you're young, like, I'm not a professional athlete, nor will I ever be, but I can see when you get drafted, you're taking top five, a lot of top five picks go to the NHL right away and stay there. And I don't know the actual percentage of which ones do or how many, but the fact that he played like 60 games, he played 70 games last year. And then this year, after 19, they're ready to send him back down. And the year before last year, I'm pretty sure he spent the whole year back in the QMJHL, if I'm not mistaken. They sent him back to the juniors for a year to develop. And then they let him play with the NHL team for most of the year, and now he's played a quarter of a season, and they're ready to send him back down for more development. So maybe he thought after about a season's worth of games, he had established himself as an NHL player, and now the team doesn't exactly think so.
I've also heard that during the playoffs last season, he didn't really perform up to where they wanted him to be, and he got scratched quite a bit because they literally benched him and was like, we're not going to play you because we don't trust you. Essentially, that's what it is. I don't trust you in this situation. You're not developed enough yet to play in a big-time situation like the playoffs against very good players. But I wonder if that played into it too, as they considered that last season, and they were like, hey, man, if you want to be up here, you have to be ready to play a good two-way game to be a player that isn't on this team every night. Now, I realize his analytics say he's good. But at the same time, John Cooper's done this before with Nikita Kucherov, and I don't think I'm going to be able to look up the stats at the same time this is up right now. But I know Kucherov did really well last year, but the year before, obviously not as well. And I think that's what he needed, was a kick in the butt to get his stuff together. Now with Drouin I think needs the same thing. Now, Keith, as somebody that doesn't really, you're kind of on the outside looking in. you kind of understand where Dylan's coming from when he says that a player, if like Dylan said earlier, he'd understand that if Drouin did well in the minors, he could come back up to the majors, right?
Yeah, I mean, if he got his practice in, he improved and all that, then yeah,
Okay.
he'd probably come back better and could perform better. I could see that.
So now you don't. Drouin had 3 points in 7 games,
Which
and
is,
and 2 points of those came in the first game. So really, he had 1 point in 6 games and a very good first game. So, do you think, from an outside perspective, that that is good?
it's inconsistent.
Does that warrant
Scoring points, but not consistently. You could almost, I mean, from the way it sounds, you could almost say those sound like lucky shots.
Do you think that that warrants him coming back to the majors in the big leagues?
Well, are the minors still going on?
Well, yeah, he's still technically he's still in the minors, but actually,
Well,
really,
how much time is left in the minors? Can he stay there for as long as they want him to stay there?
well, yeah, he's under contract, which is a whole nother part of the argument. And I don't know, like Dylan.
Well, if he still has time to improve in the minors, then yeah, I'd say let him back eventually.
See, now this is the problem. Drouin wanted to come back now, or not play at all until he got traded. So he didn't show up to his game.
Well, no, no. You're not performing to what they got him for. He's the third pick, right?
Yeah.
Third pick. So they expect him to play at a certain level. So how much game time did he get when they first got him?
Sounds like he got 70 games last year.
He got 70 games, all right? Like, how much time did he spend in each of those games? Like, how much time?
Well, he probably was like third line, so he probably wasn't getting a big role on the team. He was probably getting more of a secondary role.
All right. Well, they just got him on the team. Is that typical for somebody fresh on the team? Like any hockey team?
Yeah, I think
All right. So then,
especially a team like theirs.
all right. So then it's kind of like a trial phase, right?
Well, yeah, they could have sent him
Like,
down anytime they wanted.
Yeah, but then he's not performing to expectations, so they send him down, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And he gets pissy and wants to be traded. But it's like, no, you're not performing to expectation. You're going to sit there. You're going to sit there and think about what you've done, and you're going to perform and get better. So he's getting pissy and saying, no, I'm not going to play at all, but you're under contract. So you kind of have to. So now he's suspended?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, he's suspended without pay.
For how long?
Until whenever. They said indefinitely, until he either plays or, whatever. Unless Tampa trades him or he comes back and plays, he's suspended without pay because he violated his contract.
So he needs to get the stick out of his butt and just play so he can get better, so he can go back up to the majors. That's what it's called, right?
Yeah, the pro level, yeah. Dylan, what?
Yeah, so he can go back up there, so he can have his practice and get better, go up to the pro level, and then play to the expectation that they expected him to play when they got him as the third pick.
That's kind of how I feel, Dylan.
But he's got to stick up his butt. And he needs to get rid of the stick.
Dylan, what's your? I know you're opposite, so what's your opinion on what we just said? And what's your opinion on him not, saying, nah, I'm not going to
What's
play
your
anymore.
opinion on the stick? What do you think about the stick?
Keith's really getting heated about this, but
He's got it's a fairly large stick, all right?
I'll take your word for it. But it's a tough thing. He's a 20-year-old kid. He's younger than I think probably two of the three of us. He's probably right around your age, Keith. I don't know when your birthdays are. But you have to think, like, is he doing this himself? If I was a 20-year-old kid who had been drafted by the NHL, I'd probably put a lot of value in what my agent was telling me. I don't think I certainly wouldn't be able to do all this by myself. So I think maybe he's getting bad advice, and if he is, maybe it's his fault for keeping around this agent. If he's not, then you can put a lot of it on him. But he's not happy with the situation, and he is expressing it. At least he wants to go somewhere else, somewhere that a team that will appreciate him maybe a little more than he feels he is in Tampa. And
what's funny is that another team could do the exact same thing. Is this a
potentially,
typical thing
but
for a hockey team to send somebody down into the minors to get better and then bring them back? Is that like a normal practice?
I would say so. With young players, like obviously you want them to develop it. I mean, it varies player by player. Players are all different in different ways, grow at different rates, etc. Need to work on different aspects. But like, I'm not saying that he's been a perfect angel through all of this. That he's handling it with grace and everything. But like, if the kid's not happy, then I can respect that he's at least saying, like, I'm not happy in this situation. I would like to go somewhere else because I'm not being utilized properly. We've seen players. This comparison is not a direct comparison because it's different, but like the Boston Bruins had Tyler Seguin, number 2 overall pick. He didn't have the role on that team that he needed, so they traded him to Dallas, and he's one of the best offensive players now. A better comparison, Nino Niederreiter, number 5 overall pick in 2010 for the New York Islanders. He played 64 games for them in the NHL level. Had 3 points, was a minus 30.
So bad.
He got sent down, requested a trade. They sent him to Minnesota for Cal Clutterbuck, like a 3rd, 4th line role player and a 3rd round pick. And it's like Yzerman may not want to have to accept that for John Drouin because he knows the talent is still there. He just has to work on the game. But like, a change of scenery might be good for this guy. We've seen there were rumors Ryan Johansson was unhappy in Columbus this year probably because of John Tortorella. But he got traded. He's been very good on Nashville since they got him. And it can go either way. Nino Niederreiter's been like below that 0.5 points per game. He did have 20 goals last year, but I think it was 37 points total. So on the whole, he hasn't been great. But then you look at guys like Johansson and even Seth Jones, who went the other way in that trade, who have both been very good since receiving that change of scenery that they needed.
I can see what you're saying. He has every right to be angry. Yes. But I think my issue, where the stick is up the butt, is that he won't play in these minor games.
Yeah.
I think that's my issue.
I don't think.
Okay, this phrase is now overused, but
Yeah.
that's where the stick is up the butt. That he's entitled. He needs to keep playing these games. All right? You're under contract. It's important that he plays these games. Yeah, you can be pissy the entire way through. Oh well. And yeah, he probably is getting poor advice. That is a possibility I could see. But the fact of the matter is he's not playing the games that he's been told to play. And so he got suspended. And that kind of attitude there isn't really appealing to other teams, I would guess.
No.
So that there is going to make him undesirable. Undesirable. English. So teams won't want him for that reason, because it's going to be, they could be having that mindset where, we have to treat him like a god, or he'll get pissy and not play. So I guess it looks bad. It just looks really bad, is what I'm trying to say. Know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I can see how it reflects poorly upon him, but if you're a GM and you're looking at John Drouin, I think one of the things you have to consider is that at this point, you're probably not paying third overall pick price to get him. So, but you're going to have to pay enough to get Steve Yzerman in Tampa Bay to be interested in giving up such a prospect. But I feel like you have to know, like, if you're acquiring him, like, okay, I have this spot on the team. I think he can come in here, fill this role, develop well, while also getting his NHL time and be happy here. And I mean, maybe that's something that only a few teams will be able to fulfill. But I think if you are a GM looking at Tampa Bay, then I think there's a high enough ceiling. I still think there's a high enough ceiling there to warrant maybe taking the chance if you have the resources to make the trade and the opportunity for the player you would be receiving.
Gotcha.
It's a thing. I don't think, he definitely hurt his value, which Yzerman has to consider.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Now,
yeah.
When Garth Snow or whoever traded Nino Niederreiter, they traded a 5th overall pick for Cal Clutterbuck in the 3rd. And in hindsight, that was probably a fair deal because Nino Niederreiter really never turned out to be what he was supposed to be or what people thought he was going to be. But at the same time, he played his games. It's you got to honor your contracts. I'm just really not happy about it. I think that Tampa's done everything they could to make this player a quality NHL player, and he doesn't want to do it the way Tampa wants him to do it. He should be happy he didn't end up on Detroit, because Detroit would have him sitting in the AHL for the next 3 years, because that's how, some teams like Detroit Red Wings, just to give you an idea, Keith, the Detroit Red Wings, who the Sabres played last night, have not missed the playoffs in our whole lifetime, okay? So they've always had a chance to win the championship, right?
Mm-hmm.
They take every one of their players, except for the one that came up this year. The one that came up this year was much better, and they actually put him in the lineup right away. But most of the players they put down in the minors first to become good enough in their system to play them. Okay? Well, because of this, they haven't missed the playoffs because they've always had players that play the right system, play the way they want them to play. And the captain of their team for 15 of those 23 years was Steve Yzerman, who just so happens to be the general manager for Tampa Bay that gets to decide where Drouin goes and what he's supposed to be doing.
So then he knows what he's doing.
I wanted to get that across, that I think Yzerman, in making him go down, just makes complete sense. And I think he comes from that Detroit mindset where players that aren't responsible yet defensively or not really developed enough need to go to the minors and develop there. So I just want to get that across, I guess. But we had a good discussion about this. Um, I think we talked about. I think, you mentioned Eric Lindros, and I'd like to just say, I think Lindros telling Quebec to screw off is causing him not to be in the Hall of Fame today.
Oh,
He has Hall of Fame numbers. Eric Lindros, I think, is a point per game player over his career. Only 40-something players all time have ever been that good. Eric Lindros was supposed to be one of the best of all time. He had some injuries that caused him not to play as many games as probably he wanted to. But at the same time, before he even played a game, he told Quebec he wasn't going to play, like Dylan said. And he got traded to the Flyers. Now, I think that's why he isn't in the Hall of Fame. And I think that's what you got to look at with Drouin. How long is it going to take Drouin to get his reputation back? Because Lindros was a good hockey player. But I think his reputation may have never been and never has been the same. Dylan, how long do you think do you agree with that sentiment, or do you think that he may not be in the Hall of Fame for another reason or something else?
I mean, it's actually something that I hadn't thought about, because I was looking at him earlier. I was doing a little bit of Googling pre-show, and it hadn't crossed my mind. But you think, like, maybe people are looking at that like, why didn't, like, he wouldn't even give Quebec a chance for whatever reasons he didn't. I don't even remember why he didn't want to go there, but you could certainly look at that, and it won't help your reputation. But he didn't play quite as long as a lot of players. I think, what did he play, like, until he was 34 or something, 32?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so he could have, I mean, I don't want to say he could have, because you mentioned his injury problems. I believe he had concussions because he was a physical type player, but his stats would warrant strong consideration, but you have to think about whether that is actually what's, and I think it very well could be if you look at it.
Yeah, that's something that I was thinking about, because I saw Corey Hirsch on Twitter, and he said it himself. He did never end up being a good goalie, but he was touted as a good goalie. And then he said, "I'm not playing in the AHL for Vancouver," and he said it himself. It took me years to get my reputation back. And Lindros may never have gotten it back, and may always be that guy that turned down a team before he ever played for them. Now, I also want to talk about the Eli Manning situation, because I think that is a cultural difference. I think the culture in the NFL is different than that in the NHL. I think people come from different mindsets in that regard. I don't agree with it either. If I was 22 years old back in 2004, and I'm thinking about what Eli Manning's doing, I'm probably like, Eli, you're going to play for the Chargers because that's where you're going to play. But then again, I don't know, maybe it's because Eli Manning won championships that his reputation was fixed by the championships. I don't know, because Lindros never won a championship. So, I don't know. But it sounds as if, at least Keith, the neutral party, does feel like Drouin, to quote Keith, needs to get his stick out of his ass and actually, get going here.
yeah. You have a contract, fulfill it. Get the stick out of your butt.
Because in 2 years, he has the right to be offered contracts by other teams. Now, Tampa can match any offer because he's so young. You got to be, I think, is it 26 years old? I think it might be 26. And at the age of 26, then you can talk to any team you want and go to anywhere you want. But up till then, if your contract is up, any team can make an offer to you, but Tampa or whatever team you're on gets the opportunity to match it. But I don't know, to be honest. I don't know if Drouin will leave. I'm sure Tampa will probably just let someone take him and get the compensation back that way, because it's probably more fitting than what they're going to get now. But I don't know. I don't like the fact that he's sitting on his couch. I don't. He's sitting on his couch in Montreal right now. I think the first like Keith says, he's got to just play. So is that what you're saying? To get his reputation back in order, he's got to play?
I'd say so. I'd say he needs to play. He needs to play. Recognize that he's being a bit entitled, and kind of just make the best of it. And realize what you said about the manager, the coach, the whoever.
Yeah. Yzerman.
Knows what he's doing and needs to just kind of accept that and play. Because if he doesn't play, he's not. I mean, I don't know what would happen, really. But it won't be good. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Dylan, what do you think Drouin should do to save his reputation?
I think he should, honestly, I think he should get back on the ice, keep playing, even if it has to be in the AHL. And maybe if he went to Yzerman and said, even confirming that he still wants to trade, but saying, I'm sorry, I've been handling this the wrong way, maybe he gains back a little respect from Yzerman, and Yzerman can then grant him his wish, and give both sides of this situation I don't know how to word, happy ending, if you will, to where Tampa will be satisfied and Jonathan Drouin will be satisfied, because a player of that caliber or of his talent, of the prowess he came into that draft with, isn't something you want to see go to waste.
It's true.
Yeah, I can see that. So basically, what it comes down to is he needs to play.
Yeah. I think he should fire his agent, too.
That too. If the agent is giving him bad advice, the agent needs to go.
I would do that first. The agent, go. I'd be like, Jonathan Drouin, type into Twitter your name. And then read all the former players saying what they're saying about you, and read it, and how they're saying, it looks like he's getting bad advice. And then you read it, and you're like, oh, 200 former players are saying, you know what? It looks like my agent is screwing me and not giving me good advice. And then fire him. So I think that's what he's got to do. He has a Twitter. I know, because I referenced one of his tweets from a couple of years ago in my Spittin' the Truth video about this. So I know he has a Twitter. So that's all he's got to do, because he's sitting on a couch in Montreal. I know he's not just watching Canadiens games. But yeah, all right. I wanted to talk about more than just the Jonathan Drouin thing, but this has already went pretty much 40 minutes.
40 minutes.
To be honest, I'm going to probably just end it on this note here and not talk about anything else. But we wanted to talk about John Scott, and maybe, I know I mentioned to Keith before, and I maybe made a little mention to Dylan about the Tennis Federation. But I don't think we're not going to get to those, because I don't want to make these too long. I want to see if someone wants to listen to it, maybe sit and listen to it. So
We can only handle your voice for so long, Andrew.
I know they want to rip their ears out. So I just want to thank you for watching. And if throughout the video, it's too late now. But, I should have said this in the beginning. But comment below with your thoughts and whether you agree or disagree. Like it if you liked it. Dislike it if you dislike it. But if you dislike it, please put below constructive criticism. That was a problem in the last few shows we have had, that we didn't get the criticism necessary to succeed later. So give us criticism, share it, because if you say, hey, these guys sound like assholes, or hey, I agree with these guys. Whatever you want to put there, I don't care as long as someone else watches it. So do that. Every Saturday, I hope to get this uploaded. Now, I don't know if we'll record it every Saturday. It depends on how that works, but Saturday will be the day it's uploaded. So, thanks for watching. This was the Spittin' the Truth podcast, the first episode. So, we'll see ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.